Welcome everyone to this online seminar organized by the International People's Assembly. I'm Giorgia Gusciglio. I'm an activist with the group Interglobalized Solidarity based in Belgium, and I have the honor to moderate today's event. I'm very thankful that we have great speakers with us today, some coming from all the way from Palestine, some from Europe, and about all of us here to discuss a very important part of his Palestinian history, which is the Nakba. I would like to start this small intro with a quote from Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. He says, "We will not forget the keys to our homes, nor the road lamps that were lit by our blood." On 15 May 2023, Palestinians mark 75 years of the Nakba, the Arabic word meaning catastrophe. The day will commemorate the events in 1948 that saw over 750,000 Palestinians driven into exile and over 500 Palestinian towns and villages erased from the map. But it would also recognize the reality of the ongoing Nakba, the process of dispossession, ethnic cleansing, and colonization that led to a system of oppression across all of historic Palestine. However, today, thanks to the extensive work of Palestinian civil society, trade unions, grassroots movements, and the broader solidarity movement around the world, this system is being acknowledged as an apartheid regime, and the struggle continues in trying to dismantle it. We have an outstanding panel today that I will introduce to you, and that will give you us different insights on Nakba, from the ongoing resistance and the role of solidarity movement in supporting the struggle for a free Palestine to really the roots of the Nakba itself. But first, some housekeeping rules. We are live streaming on YouTube, so please post your comments and questions to the speaker in the YouTube chat. We'll collect them and we'll answer them live after the 4 interventions. So I will, without further ado, will introduce the first speaker of today. We have with us Professor Ilan Pappé. Ilan Pappé is an historian. He is a professor at the College of Social Sciences and International Studies at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom. And he's the director of the university's European Center for Palestine Studies and co-director of the Exeter Center for Ethno-Political Studies. He supports the one-state solution in the territory of Israel and Palestine, where Palestinians and Israelis have full equal rights, and also argues that Zionism is the cause of unrest in the Middle East. He researched and wrote extensively on the Nakba, which he considers to be a continuing process of ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Professor Pappé, thanks a lot for joining us. My question to you is, can you help us kind of trace the thread of events that explain the historical and geopolitical roots of Nakba? How did it, we know there has been several processes, but how can we make sense of all of this that happened and led to the culmination, the escalation of 1948? The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I understand I have about 20 minutes to do this. I will try and be as concise as possible. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this very important webinar, and it's a great honor to be with the rest of the distinguished guests on this occasion. Let me start with February 1947 in order to give us all a kind of chronological setup for the Nakba. Of course, the history of Palestine, or at least the history of Zionism in Palestine since 1882 is the better background for the Nakba, but we don't have time to do the whole history of Palestine. In the very beginning of February 1947, the British cabinet decided to end the mandate over Palestine and to leave the country after nearly 30 years of rule. The economic crisis in Britain in the wake of the Second World War brought a Labour government to power, which was willing to shrink the empire and cater for the needs of the people of the British Isles over the needs of the empire. Palestine proved to be a burden and not an asset anymore for Britain. Both the native Palestinians and the Zionist settlers were now fighting against the British mandate and demanded its end. The dice was cast in a cabinet meeting on the 1st of February 1947, and the fate of Palestine was entrusted in the hands of the United Nations, an inexperienced international organization in those days, already affected by the onset of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Nonetheless, Palestine, quite exceptionally, the superpowers consented on allowing other member states of the United Nations to offer a solution to the future of Palestine without any direct interference by the two superpowers. The discussion about Palestine's future was transferred, therefore, to the famous, or rather infamous, depends on one's point of view, United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, UNSCOP, made of member states and whose very appointment enraged the Palestinians and member states of the Arab League, as they expected that after the mandate, Palestine would be treated in the same way that other mandatory states in the region were treated, namely allowing the people themselves, in a democratic way, to determine their political future. At the time, nobody in the Arab world would have agreed to allow European settlers in North Africa, for instance, in Libya, Algeria, or Tunisia, to take part in determining the future of their newly independent countries. In a similar way, the Palestinians rejected the idea that the settler colonial movement of Zionism would have a say in the future of their homeland. Most of these settlers arrived anyway just 2 years before UNSCOP was appointed. The Palestinians boycotted UNSCOP, and as they feared, this committee proposed to create on nearly half of their homeland, in fact, much more than half of the homeland, a Jewish state, as part of a United Nations General Assembly resolution passed by the General Assembly on the 29th of November, 1947. The Zionist leadership accepted the petition because of Palestine, but had no intention of adhering to it in practice on the ground. The petition detailed plan was unacceptable to the Zionist leadership, although the principle of a Jewish state was, of course, welcomed. According to the resolution, in the areas accorded to the Jewish state, almost half of the population would still be Palestinians, and the space consisted, as mentioned, only of half of, or a little more than half of the country coveted or desired by the Zionist movement. Already for more than 30 years now, probably more than 30 years, professional historians have unearthed enough declassified archival material, mainly from Israel, for exposing the Zionist strategy from November 1947 all the way up to the end of 1948, which is the year, this whole period is the year of Nakba. I call the Zionist strategy at that period, namely from November 1947 to the end of 1948, I call this strategy a master plan for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. The passage of time and the exposure of more material and highly ever-growing crucial Palestinian projects of oral history only accentuated the advocacy of applying this term to events called by the Palestinians the Nakba. In recent years, an old definition of Zionism, a settler colonial movement, was revived by scholars researching the history of Palestine. Such a perspective of Zionism explains clearly why the Zionist leadership could not have really resigned to the idea of partitioning Palestine. Like any other settler colonial movement, it was a movement of Europeans who were outcast in the continent and had to make a new life for themselves elsewhere, usually in places already inhabited by other people. The need to eliminate these indigenous people became the hallmark of such movement, leading, for instance, to the genocide of Native Americans in North America. Having as much of the new place with as few of the locals as possible in it was already a prominent theme in the Zionist ideology and thought from the very inception of the movement in the 1880s. British rule disabled any significant land takeover of the land by the Zionist movement. Less than 6% of the lands of Palestine were under Zionist ownership when the British mandate ended in 1948. But on the land that was taken, mainly through purchase of land from landowners, from absentee landlords living outside of Palestine, such as the Susuk family and the Huri family in Beirut, the local farmers were ethnically cleansed with the approval of the British authorities, particularly in areas of Wadi Hawaris and Marj ibn Ammar, one in the center of Palestine and one in the eastern northern part of the country. The leadership began planning for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in February 1947. That is the moment it was clear that Britain is leaving Palestine. And the early operation took place only a year later under the noses of the British mandatory authorities. We have to remember Britain was still responsible for law and order in Palestine until May 1948. The leadership needed to rush the operations in February 1948. They wanted more time to prepare for the ethnic cleansing, but they had to start the ethnic cleansing in February 1948 since the United States and other members of the United Nations began to doubt the wisdom of a partition plan to which the Palestinians, who were the majority, and the indigenous people, 60% of the people were still Palestinian in 1948, as well as the Arab world objected to, and thus they searched for an alternative solution. So the first thing the Zionist leadership did was to establish facts on the ground, even before the official end of the mandate, which was destined to be on the 15th of May, 1948. So in February 1948, especially the American State Department begins to say, partition is leading to bloodshed, so it cannot be a good peace plan. And anyway, the majority of the people in Palestine do not accept it. And they suggested a different plan to make Palestine an international trusteeship. That kind of change of mind, although the American did not stick to it, rushed the Zionist operation. So they started already ethnic cleansing in February 1948. What they decided to do before May the 15th, 1948, is to cleanse by force the Palestinians from the areas allocated by the United Nations to a Jewish state, as well as taking many of the towns of Palestine, although some of them were already located in the United Nations Arab state. Now, who could oppose these plans? Remember, the plan is to, by force, to expel people from their homes and houses. The Palestinians were not a military match to the Jewish community paramilitary groups. Some Arab volunteers, as you know, made their way, but also did not tip the balance in a way that could defend the Palestinians from the plan to ethnically cleanse them. The Arab world had the ability, maybe, to do it, we don't know, but it decided to wait anyway, until May the 15th before sending troops into Palestine. And when they sent troops into Palestine, it was too little and too late. The fact that the Palestinians were quite defenseless between the 29th of November 1947, when the United Nations resolution was adopted, and the 15th of May 1948, the day the mandate ended, and the first unit of the neighboring Arab state entered Palestine to try and salvage the Palestinians, is not a mere chronological fact. And don't mention it just as a fact. It debunks categorically the main claim in the Israeli propaganda about the war, that the Palestinians became refugees because the Arab world invaded Palestine and told the Palestinians to leave. A myth that too many people still accept, even some friends of Palestine today around the world. Namely, according to this narrative, had the Arab world refrained from attacking Israel, the Palestinians might have escaped the fate of refugeehood and exile. This is a distortion of what really happened. Nearly 250,000 Palestinians were already refugees before May the 15th, 1948. And as a result of this ethnic cleansing, a reluctant Arab world, one should say, the Arab regimes were not crazy about this. They did send eventually their armies to try and save the rest of the Palestinians. A systematic and international and intentional ethnic cleansing took place between February and May 1948. Almost all the Palestinians living in Haifa, in Jaffa, were forcefully removed from their homes, and the towns of Baisan, Safad, and Acre were completely depopulated. The villages around them suffered from a similar fate. In the area around the western slope of Jerusalem mountains, tens of villages, probably 39 in numbers, were ethnically cleansed, and at times, as unfolded in the Deir Yassin massacre on the 9th of April 1948, the expulsion was accompanied by massacres. The entry of the Arab armies in May 1948 posed a challenge to the new state of Israel. But by that time, the military capacity of the Jewish state increased considerably with the help of weapons, especially from the Eastern Bloc, authorized by the Soviet Union, because Britain and France embargoed arms supply to Israel. And its army, the Israeli army, was able to carry out its missions on two fronts. One against the Arab armies, which more or less the war with them lasted until August 1948, when the largest contingent from Egypt was ordered to withdraw back to Egypt. The second, and the more important front, was a continuation of the ethnic cleansing operation, targeting now mostly areas accorded to the United Nations partition resolution to the Arab state. They already took the Jewish state and ethnically cleansed Palestinians from almost all the Palestinians from it until May 48. Now they began to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from the United Nations Arab states. The operation in the Upper Galilee in particular recorded some of the worst atrocities committed by the Israeli army during the Nakba, partly because of a resistance of people who already knew the fate awaiting them under Israeli occupation, and partly due to the fatigue of the occupying forces who dispensed with any previous, if they had any previous, inhibitions in the way they treated the civilian population in the region. At that time, also near Hebron in Al-Dawaime, probably the biggest massacre of them all, of men, women, and babies were executed by the Israeli soldiers. The head of the 60,000 resident villages estimated, the Mukhtar estimated, that 455 people, half of them children and women, were massacred by the Israeli soldiers. Two areas of historical Palestine escaped the fate of being ethnically cleansed by Israel. The area that became known as the West Bank was taken over nearly without a fight by the Jordanian army and some Iraqi forces as part of an unwritten agreement between Israel and Jordan, that in return for this annexation of the West Bank to Jordan, Jordan would play a minimal military role in the overall Arab efforts to salvage Palestine. And we know that the Arab Legion deserted the cities of Lid and Ramle, the only two cities apart from Nazareth still left unoccupied. And in the summer, Israel could occupy it because the Legion forces retreated from these two towns, and all the population in these two towns were also expelled in the summer of 1948. Yet, under the pressure after the war by Israel, Jordan, in fact, did not get the whole of the West Bank. It conceded during the armistice negotiations with Israel part of what was supposed to be its West Bank. This area is called Wadi Ara, connecting the Mediterranean and the Jenin district that Israel forced Jordan to give it by threat of war during the negotiations in the summer of 1949 for an armistice. This annexation posed a problem to a settler colonial state such as Israel. Having more territory meant having also more Palestinians in the Jewish state. Thus, smaller operations of ethnic cleansing were taking place to reduce the number of Palestinians living in Wadi Ara. This connection between geography and demography led David Ben-Gurion, the prime minister, to reject the pressure from his generals to occupy the West Bank as well. These generals would be the politician who would push for the takeover of the West Bank in June 1967 to compensate for what they saw as a mistake for not occupying it in 1948. Israel also left another area which became known as the Gaza Strip. It was an artificial rectangular Israel created as a huge receptor of hundreds of thousands of refugees. It cleansed from the southern parts of Palestine and from Jaffa, and allowed Egypt to keep it as a military occupied area. On the ruins of the Palestinian villages, Israel built settlements, quite often using the Hebrew version of the original Arabic name. Thus, Safuria became Tzipori and Lubia became Lavi. Or planted a recreational park trying to erase any trace of culture, life, and society it destroyed within 9 months in 1948. Half of Palestine's population became refugees. More than half of its villages were demolished, more than 530 villages, and its towns were de-Arabized by the occupying forces. The Nakba destroyed the country as well as the aspiration and careers of its people. The huge human capital that the Palestinian society developed over the years was invested in other Arab countries, contributing to their cultural, educational, and economic development and progress. The message from the world to Israel was that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which was well known in the West, was acceptable, mainly as a compensation for the Holocaust and the overall centuries of anti-Semitism that plagued the continent. Hence, Israel continued the ethnic cleansing after 1967, when once more an additional space brought it occupied, when once more an additional space it occupied included a large number of quote unquote undesired people. This time the ethnic cleansing was incremental and, as you know, goes on until today. Nonetheless, the Palestinians are still there, showing incredible resilience and resistance. Alongside the ongoing Nakba, there is an ongoing intifada, and I'm sure other speakers will talk about it. And as long as Israel does not account for what it had done and is doing, the colonization will continue, as will the anti-colonialist struggle against it. The only possible way of rectifying the past evil is by respecting the Palestinian right of return, or the right of return of the Palestinian refugees, and the establishment of a state all over historical Palestine based on the principles of democracy, equality, and social justice, built through the process of restitutive justice and compensates the people for the loss of land, careers, and life by the new state and with the help of the world. Thank you very much. I hope this gave some sort of a background. Of course, there are many things that cannot do beyond 20 minutes, and I will be very happy to fill the gaps in the Q&A session.
Professor, you did not disappoint this Herculean task of giving us this very thorough but illuminating and tragic, of course, encounter of what happened, how it happened, and also how we are still today here, why it's still key that we are here today talking about it. So thank you so much, and happy that you stay with us for the questions that will follow. Now we go to the next speaker, Bassam Al-Sahli. Bassam Al-Sahli is the Secretary General of the Palestinian People's Party and a deputy in the Palestinian Legislative Council in the left-leaning Al-Badil list. Bassam Al-Sahli was born in Al-Lamari camp in 1960. He obtained a master's degree in international studies and wrote many books on intellectual and political studies. He was a member of the National Steering Committee representing the student movement, where he was president of the Birzeit University Student Council between 1979 and 1981. He led the student movement struggle against the Camp David Accords, and as a result, he was arrested several times and placed under house arrest. He was a member of the Unified National Command of the First Intifada. He was arrested in 1999 and sentenced to 3 years in prison and another 3 years suspended. With the outbreak of the Tunnel Intifada in 1996 and the Al-Aqsa Intifada in 2000, he participated in its leadership bodies with other national forces and frameworks. He's a member of the Executive Committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Ahlan wa sahlan, Mr. Sahli. The question for you would be, what are the difference between 70 years ago when the Nakba started and today? And can we talk about a third intifada today, what we see happening in Palestine? And you have as well 20 minutes. The floor is yours. You need to unmute. Perfect.
Yes, okay. Good evening for all. I'm sorry, I will not continue the meeting because of some accidents now, and just as you see, but I will try to focus on the main issues before I will not going directly for the answer of the question, but I will mention some facts. Maybe it can help us to answer the question. First, that the Zionist movement could not resolve the conflict as it wanted and still is. Despite the occupation, expansion, and continuous colonial control, Israel insists to demanding Palestinian recognition of it, whether through official claims, including those that were made through the exchange between President Arafat and Israel Rabin, or the continuity of those claims in the form of demands and conditions that were renewed in what was later known as the quartet conditions for dealing Palestinian government and so and so. I can say that the Palestinian National Unity Government that still show the Israelis movement, Zionist movement, shows that the occupation and Zionism achieved in terms of facts on the ground has not been resolved despite all the similar control over the land, massacres and ethnic cleansing and the falsification of history of the conflict, but rather that this conflict remained open, contrary to the saying that were repeated by the leaders of the Zionism movement from Ben-Gurion and others, that the old die and the young forget. The old, of course, they died, but the young not forget, but continue struggling against the occupation and against the Zionist movement. Israeli and the Zionist movement continue to destroy what has been termed as historic compromise, which was accepted by the PLO despite an unfairness, including being less than the theoretical reference that was included in partition resolution of 1947. Of course, this which was called as historic compromise is not working, and the Israelis destroyed this completely. Excuse me.
Is everything okay?
بسام ما نسمعك يا بسام.
Yes, they were not.
Unmute yourself.
No, he's not speaking either. But okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, muted yourself. Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Israel and the Zionist movement continue to destroy what has been termed as historic compromise, which was accepted by the PLO despite an unfairness, including being less than its theoretical reference that was included in the partition resolution of 1947. It also continued to restore, producing and escalating the conflict towards its borders, resist colonialism project, and continue that, considering that the Nakba of 1948 is suffering to achieve this purpose. And even the occupation in 1967 was not sufficient to achieve this. And for this reason, the fragile and unjust agreements that have been achieved since Oslo have been destroyed, and the actual systematic rejection continued and organization, the establishment of the Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, as well as changing of the facts on the ground that prevent this and in Jerusalem from being the capital of the Palestinian state. And of course, the UN resolution according to the Palestinian refugees to come back again to their lands. The third point, what I want to mention is Israel and in its in sort of reimpose the resolution of the conflict in according which it is project that resulted in the Nakba of 1948 re-evokes the same tools of operation and control that it exercised and reproduce the same forms, organizations, and resist informal and official frameworks for this implementation. What we can see now that they are again come back to use the same tools which they used before and to try to let the Palestinian under more and more pressure to even to leave their to leave their homes and to leave their lands. The risks of representative massacre, displacement, exclusion, and killing are serious danger, and the exposed displacement of the fascism extremist government in Israel and its social and political has represent tangible expression to come back again for the same tools and the same ideas which they used during the Nakba of 1948. The racist practice of Zionism confirms its permanent obsession with demographic reality and seeks continuously to confront it with various methods and projects, especially since the danger of this form its point of views in increasing with its systematic destruction of the establishment of the Palestinian state and its insist of the project of the its systematic destruction of the establishment of the Palestinian state and its insistence of the project of Greater Israel and the means it practices in order to confront this must not be underestimated. In one fell swoop by separation the Gaza Strip and besiening it and by taking advantage of the reality of the devastating division in the Palestinian areas, it seeks to remove 2 million Palestinians from the framework of these demographic challenges. It also seeks to continue its project, including Al-Jalil and Nakba and all Al-Muthallaf. It also seeks to deal with that in addition, of course, all of the manifestation of that in Jerusalem and the West Bank and general areas. So the Israelis demographic issues of it's very important of the Palestinian people, but it is not complete without glorifying the cause and slogan, the unity of the Palestinian people, and without dealing with that, without the framework of the Palestinian nation. And this is extremely important. I think the main point of the power of the Palestinian people is to insist of the Palestinian as a nation, and the unity of our nation is very important in this terms of the conflict of the Israelis strategy. The fifth issue that the Palestinian narrative, of course, which is very important for us, and excuse me, the Palestinian narrative in confrontation of the narrative of the occupation and reconciliation in the context of the Palestinian national identity and the program of the national movement of this context, and in the center of its confront the colonial project and focusing on the liberation content of the Palestinian cause and rebuilding its system and leadership structure on the basis of this strong support, despite the speciality of the reality that the Palestinian people in the homeland, through their national movement at home, as well as in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, in addition to the gathering of the Palestinian people in the diaspora, but they have realizing their leadership framework institution elite, and they can and should benefit greatly and truly from the recognition of the existence of representing its sole legitimacy of the Palestinian Liberation Organization of developing and strengthening its role at the level of restructure of the PLO. The Palestinian project also support, despite all the difficulties and risks, the growing popular and international support for the Palestinian liberation movement, the rejection of the exposure of the content of the racism, colonialism project and Israel and apartheid system and aggression reality, it of course supports the Palestinian people in their struggle against the Israelis movement Zionist project. The establishment of an event of the Palestinian Nakba in the United Nations, it is a new aspect and an indication of that, in addition to the expansion of the campaign of solidarity with the Palestinian people and the boycott of the occupation through BDS and others. But all of this, first and foremost, must push the various parties and component of the Palestinian political forces to immediately end the division and build national unity in line with the unity of the Palestinian people and their goals of liberation and independence. What I can say now, what is happening on the ground, the Palestinian people continue struggle against the occupation and continue struggling against the Zionist movement apartheid system. But what we need is to make a complete coordination, complete rule between the work on the ground from the people, from our people in everywhere, and the political willingness to have the unity and to continue for the future of the struggle of the Palestinians. I think the third intifada, it will come sooner or later. And what we are seeing now on every place is some phases or some phenomenon of this intifada, but it will be to let it more and more strength is to organize this under the one strategy of the Palestinian factions and groups who are demanded to ending the division immediately and going for the unity of the Palestinian people. Thank you very much, and I hope this speech I answered the question.
Thank you. I think also it's important to close also this intervention with a bit of what can we do, what are the needs, what are the demands in a more concrete, like, I think it's very key that we call for unity indeed, and we connect struggles. There are also struggles all over the world of oppressed people, and it's important to build coalitions and build power together. And indeed, so on that I totally agree with you, Mr. Bassam. Thank you so much. Now we will. So I was about to present the next speaker, but unfortunately she won't be joining us. I'll present her anyway. I will read a message that she shared with us. Mariam Barghouti, she could not join for medical reasons today, but she asked to read her statement. She was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and she's a Palestinian American writer, blogger, researcher, and commentator and journalist. And she's currently in Ramallah. And I'll read now what she sent to us. I apologize for not being able to join today, and humble to share breath with you all anyway. Al-Nakba is a term in Arabic which has come to refer to a point in Palestinian history, that started 75 years ago. May 1948 remains a transformative memory and reality that defines and mutilates Palestinian identity and lives on into the present. Yet, the Nakba neither began in May of 1948, nor did it end that year. The only reason that May has become Nakba's anniversary is because it coincides with the moment in history when massacres and bloodbaths became institutionalized by Zionist militias. What allowed this was the microaggressions which preceded our mass expulsion. What continues to allow this is silence, fear, and tolerance of Israeli war crimes because we are called terrorists. Today, last year, was the last day of Shireen Abu Akleh on this planet. A year later, and we are still heartbroken over her loss, and the impunity given to Israel as more salt on the wound. Imagine losing the most precious being in your life, and the killer not only roams free, but you are commanded to make peace with them. Imagine that feeling every year for 75 years, not as memories, but present-day reality. I hope you all find heart and breath in this panel to learn and unlearn the myths and the fabrications, and the attempts to hijack your humanity and consciousness. This is how fascism works. This is how oppression works, by expanding and building an army of criminals. But the criminals are not only the ones with the guns. They are those selling and trading at the expenses of our lives, purchasing settler goods, allowing a justification of one slaughter after the next. Since exactly one day last year, 310 Palestinians were killed. Right now, there is a slaughter on Gaza again. I hope to one day share a space where we speak of our successes in overcoming. Until then, persevere, organize, and breathe. Well, we send our thoughts to Mariam, and I thank her for this powerful message and words. It's very emotional also to read this. And now I will pass on to our last but not least speaker of today, my fellow comrade, Mehdi Salih. Mehdi Salih is Algerian-Belgian citizen from Liège, Belgium. He's the political coordinator of Interglobalized Solidarity for Palestine and deputy in the city municipality of Liège for the Belgian Workers' Party, PTV. Mehdi, in Europe, solidarity campaigns and movements for Palestine always existed and were part of the politicization and radicalization of young activists. What's the state of the art of European solidarity movement for Palestine? And what are the achievements? What are the success stories that you can share with us today? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you all for this invitation. It's an honor for me to be there. And as a member of Intel and as a member of the PTB, I'm very grateful to have been a part of this meeting today. Excuse me first because my English is not very good, so I will try my best. But you know, if I have some bugs sometime, I will tell you. First of all, I want just to emphasize that I'm a kid from Belgium, from the neighborhood who came from the city of Liège. And I'm half Belgian, half Moroccan Algerian. I grew up with the Palestinian cause as a motor of injustice, like many young people in Europe, like many people who has backgrounds from Arabic countries. We live this injustice in our heart. And that's why when I ask myself the question of justice towards the people, I begin to have this questionment about the society and about the society we live in. That's how I grew up in my political commitment. The first of all, it was my trip to Palestine that changed completely myself and my vision of the society and pushed me to act because I saw the reality. It's the first time also I met Ilan Mbappé at Haifa. It was a nice meeting, so now it's an honor for me to be there and to be with you in this debate. Naively, when I was there, when I was in Palestine, I meet some Palestinians that are struggling for the cause, for their lives, and I told them as comrades that I wanted to help them. in their struggle and in their fight there in Palestine. They told me directly in the eyes, go back to your country and fight with the workers in your country. That's where you are needed. That's what I decided. That's when I decided to return in Belgium and to fight there. As a lot of people, we forget sometimes that the links that are still going on today about the links towards the Israel and Europe are very strong, and that we can take our part here in Europe. Organize the solidarity movement for the Palestinian cause is our goal, is our objective. And we have to understand in Europe that our role is to break the support of our Western states to the Israeli apartheid states. Our role now is to break the ties that allows the Israeli colonial state to continue to try to take all the land from the Palestinians. And this mission is to build a movement that must now boycott, disinvest, and sanction the Israeli state. Is a difficult role, I will say honestly, because sometimes it seems very difficult, we seem isolated. But, and I will explain with the example recently, it's possible, and now we can have real example of victory that mobilize people. The apartheid regime in South Africa found itself isolated and alone in the past because diplomatically, economically, and after a long struggle, they find themselves more and more alone because people everywhere in Europe supported the cause of the people in South Africa. And sometimes it seems very difficult, but for the case in South Africa, it accelerated in just a few years and brought people together from everywhere in the solidarity of this cause. The movement against apartheid became so popular that it spread widely among the population in every home in Belgium, in England, in France, in Italy, through Europe. This debate was intense and everywhere. In every home, people have to take their side and have to have these debates. It was the same on Vietnam. And sometimes we forget that we have to be more wide, more open to have this debate, to push people to have this debate. That's what we want today in our role in Europe. Our role as an anti-imperialist, as Intel, as an anti-colonialist organization, and especially as a left-wing organization that want to fight against the far right, against injustice, against colonialism, and above all, for a free Palestine. And for me, as I explained to my friends sometime, the struggle for Palestine is linked to our struggle in Belgium. I have worked 3 years here in airports in Liège, and I see that for workers in Belgium and Europe, it's very far to see the reality of struggle in Palestine. They don't see it directly, they feel it, they understand a little bit, but they don't feel it. So I have to explain them with the reality of social injustice. I explain them that our struggle here in Belgium against social injustice is the same if we bring this as the support of Palestine. I will take an example. The same Israeli colonizer are allied with the European leaders who continue to accept the situation in Israel. We have the most trash example with Ursula von der Leyen, scandalous statements congratulating Israel despite its policies of ethnic cleansing, despite UN condemnation, despite all of Israel abuse. They continue to lie about their story, and they are eased with that. The struggle for Palestine is our struggle. Today we face great challenge, but also great opportunities in the struggle for solidarity with Palestine. We see that Israel is facing an economic crisis that is shaking the entire regime of oppression. Israel is facing unprecedented pressure, and more internal and external realities are questioning its position of strength. Today, Israel is becoming increasingly isolated politically and diplomatically, both internationally and regionally. These far-right governments give us some great opportunities. It's violence and bombings for Palestinians, but it's also show what its what it can go and radicalize more. This is the danger of Israel. This is the reality of Zionism. Zionism will push towards fascism, toward extremism. And here we have the opportunity to open the debate to those who were not aware of the situation, to those who were not understanding the situation well. Now there is a real possibility to open new debates with new people, with workers in Belgium, in England, in France, and in Italy. There is a real possibility of giving strength to the movement of solidarity with Palestine. As I said, the radicalization and fascisation of the Israeli state open up new possibilities and allows us to raise the question of Palestine everywhere. Unfortunately, there are still many simplistic debates in Europe about the Israeli versus Palestine model, but we must now broaden these debates and strengthen support for the Palestinian cause. For too long, we make this debate too marginalized. Too long we make this debate just between some left people, some people just in their side, in their reality. But now we have these three examples that give us a lot of strength. We have the example of Barcelona, a mayor that we have made, we have a support to cut links with Israeli apartheid and to cut the Twin Cities Accords with Tel Aviv. We have now a new example with Oslo. In Oslo, we see that there is a possibility to cut also the products from the colonies in Palestine. So this is our new events, new historical events that show that many cities can join this movement. And it's give us a lot of strength that as a young of Liège, as a young of proud of my city, we put this motion in Liège also, and it passed. And Liège has decided to cut all the links also with the Israeli apartheid regime. And we want to push a lot more debate in Belgium. We will have this opportunity to put in every city that we can find a support, that we can find sometimes people that can join this Palestinian cause. We will depose a motion to break the links with Israel. And in this debate, we have a lot, we organize these people, we organize people in front of the every municipality council to make this voice more and more wider, more and more larger, and to make the broaden, to have the broadened coalition, the most broadened coalition possible. And this, I will give a last example. We as Intal, we organize at Manifesta. This is a festival of solidarity in Belgium. We will organize a tournament of football from people from neighborhood that can endorse solidarity for Palestine, endorse that join the movement of solidarity with Palestine, and to be much more bigger in this process. We have these new opportunities now. We will make it real, and I think, and we supported this with Intal. I think that by widening, by going searching the workers, the people everywhere in the street, everywhere we can build coalition that can cut the links with Israel, that can denounce the reality of Israeli apartheid, and then we can stop to be sometimes in Europe and not in Palestine, because they fight all the time. But sometimes in Europe, we are the defenders of the defeat. Now we have to be the defenders of the victory, have victory for the solidarity struggle for Palestine, and to support as much as position as a progressive position on the solidarity with the Palestinian people. Thank you a lot.
Nothing to add, Kamerad. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we have a bit more time for a few questions. Thank you all for staying with us. I have one which kind of it's linked a bit with what Mehdi was saying, and was also something that Mr. Bassam mentioned in his intervention. It's about the BDS movement. BDS movement, the Palestine-led organization calling for boycott, divestment, sanctions, has also been heavily targeted by anti-BDS legislation, intimidation, smear campaigns. Can we argue that the Israeli regime and its strong allies are getting scared? Does it mean the BDS is working? If I leave the floor open to whoever wants to, or each of you wants to come in and say something, please feel free to take the floor. Mehdi, I see you are raising your hand. We can start with you, and then we go to the other two speakers.
Yeah. Yes, because we are facing this now for the moment. We have, as I will give a crazy example about the reality in Liège. When we have this victory in Liège, we are, as Intal, member of the BDS movement, and when we have this reality in Liège, that we have the victory to cut the links with Israel. There is some people that called me to say, like a Jewish commerciant, saying that, yeah, now I cannot sell goods, I cannot sell merchandise stuff in my own city. I cannot own a store, and it's the viciousity of Israeli how to say, Israeli propaganda, because they are insinuating that we trying to join the reality with Jewish reality, or to make some identity politics, to make this statement has no values. And this is the danger that we are facing now as a supporter of BDS. And now I think that they are really seeing that they are in danger. That the movement that we have made now make truly possible that all the links that are really now in act with Israel in Europe are in danger. They feel it. They can sense that we are gaining some confidence, and we are ready to hit where we can hit, to shoot where we can shoot, to break all the links we can. And we are going to face a wave of hatred, but also they always use these tools of hatred, of also violence sometimes. And I will give another example. There is a parliament of the Israeli parliament of Per Kassif that comes to felicitate me after the victory in Liège. Directly he comes back in Israel. He has directly been targeted by the ethic policy of the Knesset. He has been directly targeted by far-right Zionists, directly personally. And this is the reality, that they are more and more, they are in hatred style, they are in the violent style. It's because they fear us. You know, like Nelson Mandela, I didn't remember well the quotes, but he said at the beginning they ignore you, after they laugh at you, and after they try to beat you, but at the end you win. And it's the most important. It's why for me they are more and more aggressive in their revendication. But
Great
we
quote.
will.
Love that quote. Thank you, Mehdi. Bassam, Ilan, do you want to come in? You have...
Ilan.
You want me to go first? Yeah, not much to add to what Mehdi said. Yes, of course, the fact that there is legislation against BDS, that anti-Semitism is weaponized, even denial of the Holocaust is weaponized in order to silence initiatives like the BDS, shows that the BDS is working. Otherwise, you don't use such heavy ammunition against it. It means that people have to be united and not alone in this struggle. In some countries, it can be worse for you than in other countries. In Germany, in France, this is now legislation. In America and Britain, it's a bit easier to deal with it. But this requires legal energies, educational energies, but more than anything else, a united front. People should not individually face these campaigns of silencing. But I do think that this works very well. The only question we have to ask ourselves is that with all the success, and it's a huge success of the BDS, we are still unable to impact the reality on the ground. We have very little to tell the people in the Jenin camp Even if we tell them that BDS is very successful, there's very little else we can tell them. And they will ask you, okay, it is successful, but what does it do to us? Of course, as a historian, I know that it is important, and it will eventually, I'm optimistic, it will eventually build the pressure not only from societies, but also from governments. But probably we should do more. We should do as much as we can. I know we are all doing, but as my father used to say, activism is not an afternoon activity. It's a 24/7 activity, and we need to do more. We need to do more because Israel is now executing genocidal policies, not only in the Gaza Strip, but also inside Israel and in the West Bank. And we should really enhance our actions. And we think together, nobody can alone find a way to do it. We should consult more often and think, what can we do? Because this is now an existential issue. It's not about what is the solution, whether it's one state, two states. It's not about what will be the future. It's about what is going to happen tomorrow. So I think we should think about even something else, if we can, beyond BDS. And I think there's a new initiative of creating anti-apartheid committees all over the world. I think that's a very good initiative, together with the BDS, and hopefully we will find a way to make our voices even more heard and make them more effective, so the people on the ground will finally see that there is a result for our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed. Very important point. Yes, yes.
You know, I can, but just to agree what friends said, and beside of the BDS, and there is now initiative to let it more and more focus on the anti-apartheid system in Israel, and there is organized conference, maybe it should be on South Africa, and with this issue and this event, maybe it will be during this year. So this event against the apartheid system, beside of the BDS and others, everything with this can support yani, and help the Palestinian struggle against this.
Thank you. One question that we received and maybe also connects to what Professor Pape said about the reality on the ground, because we all have seen this ongoing protest inside Israel opposing this judicial reform project by Netanyahu, but also radicalization and politicization of Judaism. So is there a potential of alliances between this protest or not and the Palestinian resistance?
Well, maybe an indication for to which direction my answer will go is the fact that some of the organizers of the protesters in Israel declared very proudly today that they were among the pilots that massacred the people of Gaza. Maybe that gives you an indication what these demonstrations are all about. And I think that there is very little chance for these demonstrators to collaborate with the resistance. Not at this moment. I'm very hopeful that they will one day understand that there is a connection between the lack of democracy and occupation, but the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who demonstrate don't want even the Palestinian citizens of Israel to demonstrate with them. Let alone they are not allowing anyone to mention the occupation in connection to the demonstration. This is not a demonstration for democracy. This is a demonstration for secular apartheid, because they're afraid that now this secular apartheid might become more religious, more theocratic. It's an inside family feud of the apartheid system. I don't think it relates to the Palestinians in any way. The previous so-called liberal government was as brutal as this government. No, we unfortunately, we cannot wait for a change within the Israeli Jewish society for liberating Palestine. I think that this is something we all understand. We need the world, we need the Muslim world, we need the region, We need the good people of the world. We need the Jewish communities in the world. I think they understand much better than the Jewish community in Israel what is at stake for Jews as well as for Palestinians. And eventually, I think when we have a strong regional solidarity and international solidarity with the Palestinians, I think we will begin to see more people inside Israel joining that solidarity. We should never give up on Israeli Jews. I'm myself an Israeli Jew, and I work with my own society, and I try to persuade people. But I would not say that this is a priority. The priority is not to find now partners in the Jewish society. The priority is now to find partners in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, and in the international world. Palestine is a case of justice, of pure justice. It's very clear, and anyone with a modicum of decency cannot but support the Palestinians. And we have a lot of supporters around the world. The question is, are we using the best we can this support for changing the reality? I know we're all doing an effort. I'm just saying maybe we can do even a better effort. And what Bassam mentioned, I think the anti-apartheid, I think gives a very strong point of focus for solidarity. I know I myself am a member of such a committee inside the 48 Arabs that also responded to this call for creating anti-apartheid committees. I think this could be a very powerful system of support and solidarity.
Yes, I agree with Ilan about this issue, and I can say that there is no meaning to talk about full and the right democracy, and at the same time to continue the occupation. In all of these demonstrations, there is no word against the occupation and asking for ending this occupation. But unfortunately, it's in general, they have a competition even between Netanyahu and others how to make more pressure against the Palestinians.
I will join my fellow comrades about this statement, but I will add something also. I think that's about the reality about the alliance between the two. I think we cannot discuss this because it's not the reality directly in Palestine. We cannot discuss this. But what is this government is producing is interesting because they are in the European solidarity movement. I talk about what I know, but in the European solidarity movement, there is a true new debate about how far they go. And this debate is interesting because we can reach some debate inside some people, like workers, like people in Europe that have not this debate before. And this is, for me, when I explain it to people, I said, this is the essence of the problem is Zionism by itself. It's the idea self of Zionism, of occupying of all of Palestine, of the creation of Israel. And there we can have the debates. And sometimes it's very interesting because this government, I agree, it's government, and the precedent government were more liberal, more maybe radicalists. But this government is opening new debate inside the European and American society, not for the Palestinian. It's true, maybe I don't know this reality, but in Europe I have now debates with some people that I cannot have this debate before. They were truly like Israel is very good. They were truly in the propaganda of Israel, but now that we have the fascist decision, the radicalization of this government, we open this new debate. And for me, it's a debate that I can go further and further about Palestinian solidarity, but about the history of Nakba, about the reality of killings, about the bombings in Gaza, about the true solidarity that we can show towards Palestinian, and also the same as Mr. Sir Bape say, the reality also of this is a cause of justice before all. But I can enter by this door, and for me it's interesting because now we have more and more to discuss inside European societies about this reality.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, it's not an opportunity of maybe alliances, but indeed an opportunity for us to finally give the final kick to the facade of Israel as a democracy, indeed. So that's very important. But now it comes to the ending. So my final point would be, do you have a final point you would like to share today with the people listening to us online, to fellow comrades all over Europe, the world, hopefully? One final comment from all of you, and then we will close this very interesting and important debate that kickstart, unfortunately, the commemoration, but hopefully will also spread more solidarity, more concrete, meaningful solidarity, which is what we need in the end towards the Palestinian struggle. Maybe we can go now, start with the Bassam, that was the last one before, and then the other way around. You're muted. Yeah, okay.
I can say that our people will not give up, and we will continue our struggle against this apartheid system and this colonialism system. And day by day, that new generations of the Palestinians, they are know exactly how to unite, how to work together, and not to repeat the last mistake. And I hope the new generation should not repeat the last mistakes of our political experience and so on. So, but at the end of the day, I think our people will win, and we can come back again to make our unity and to ending this colonialism system in Palestine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Professor Pape?
Yes, maybe it's not connecting to what Maddie said. Maybe it is an opportunity to discuss with people the real issues, which is the Zionist ideology with people, not to be afraid to use the right language. Don't use the language of peace, the language of colonization, of anti-colonialism, of apartheid. I think the more we use this language, other people will use it. And language is very important for analyzing what's going on. And hopefully from this one of the worst moments in Palestine history, we will come all more united and extend the support that we have, which is huge in the civil society, to the political elites and the governments, which is the process which happened in South Africa during the time of apartheid South Africa, which I think hopefully is the next stage in the struggle, at least from outside of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahdi.
I would like to thank again the organization of the IPA and to make me this honor to be with some great orator that I make example for my commitment in the Palestinian struggle and in the struggle in general. And I will join what Sir Bape said about use the right words and for the first time, I will give another example. In Liège, at first, maybe 5 years or 6 years ago, we put a motion that were not speaking about apartheid, that were not speaking about colonization. And the one that has been voted now mentioned directly the apartheid of Israel, the colonization about Israel. And now we have this victory that we can show that this is apartheid and they accept it. Maybe they don't realize all, but we can now speak towards people and directly towards people to say apartheid. I really I'm very positive about this, because now with many youth in Belgium, we can say it's apartheid Israel, and before it was not possible. When I left when I go to Palestine, 8 years ago, it was not this reality. Now it's this reality, and for me, this victory, the victory that are coming, that we will make certain in Belgium, but in the solidarity movement in Europe, will bring more and more this reality of apartheid, this reality of colonization, this reality of the Zionist system, and hope we can put all the solidarity we have in our art towards the Palestinian cause, to make the links fall, and also to make all the support possible towards the Palestinian struggle and cause. And we will have the victory, inshallah, and we will have it assured.
Well, I would like to thank all our speakers for joining us today on behalf of the International People's Assembly. It was very humbling for me to be moderating this session and hear all your many thoughts, many also ideas, concrete messages of solidarity, what we can do in Europe, but in the world, build movements, build coalitions, escalate BDS, but also support reality on the ground. Not forget that the Palestinians are struggling every day, whether they're in Gaza, they're in Ramallah, they're in Jenin, they're in Haifa, they're all over historical Palestine. Sorry. And indeed, at the end, Palestinians don't need our charity. They have all the strength, all the struggle with the justice on their side, history is on their side to free themselves. What they ask from us is concrete, meaningful solidarity to end our support, our complicity, and hold Israel accountable. And I'm sure that if we follow through, we keep building power, we will all be able to see free Palestine. So thank you so much. I'll close here, and I'll see you hopefully soon. I know Ilan Pappé is coming to Belgium, and we'll hopefully welcome you soon. And Bassam, shukran jazilan وشرفنا. إن شاء الله نشوف في فلسطين. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.